hospitals train their own diagnostic AI, most hospitals are adopting black box AI. Dmitri Krylov at DX Composer is building the opposite, a platform that allows clinicians to assemble and validate their own models and fine tune them to the needs of their patients and their own skill sets. Today, we're going to talk a little bit about how that works and what needs to be true to make it work correctly in terms of data quality, managing model drift, FDA approval, and privacy. I hope you enjoyed the podcast. I'm Jolyn, your host. I've been building very large scale data and AI 0 to 1 systems for both startups and very large companies for over 20 years. Any opinions I express here are my own and not those of any current or former employer. Let's get on to talking to Dmitri. Welcome, Dmitri Krylov. How are you?
Doing well, Jocelyn. Thanks for the invite. Glad to
It's
be on
great
your
to have you.
podcast. hmm
Yeah, it's great to have you. As you know, this podcast is really focused on technical founders, and that's exactly what you're doing right now. So I thought we'd just get right into it and talk a little bit about DX Composer AI, and then kind of talk more generally about your experience as a technical founder, just so if anybody's listening, they can learn from you or you can learn from them.
Sure. I'm going to say what I know about being a startup founder and see what kind of reaction it elicits from
Right,
people. My story is,
right.
yeah, my story is not unusual. My background is in academia. I got trained as a life scientist. So I graduated with a PhD from a biochemistry department of all things. And this is probably the only context where I feel comfortable saying what my other background is, which is software engineering. So before I was doing this, whenever I said this to people, people got really surprised. How do you combine the two, software engineering and life sciences? When I was getting my first education, these two things, they never collided. They never were together in a single
Actually,
educational
I
background.
think there's a theme here because as I'm talking to founders in like aerospace and other like pure science areas, it's interesting. They have to write code to just get where they're going. They don't really see themselves primarily as like computer science engineers, but it's interesting for them. It's just like, well, I wrote a bunch of Python code or I wrote a bunch of code to get where I'm going for my science work. So it's kind of interesting. That's a very typical background that I hear.
Yeah, I'm glad to hear this. There's a transition. I was writing a lot of scientific code when I was at the NIH after graduation. But I also went to industry after that, and I realized that I hadn't been writing properly software code. I was doing scientific coding, which is different. So there are lots of things in industry that make this experience of writing code and supervising teams that write code very different. It's a different kind of occupation altogether. The thinking is there, but you need to adjust to the pace in industry. You need to adjust to the product requirements and so on and so forth. And that's actually a good transition. It teaches you to jump over hoops, and you need to do this when you go solo on a startup adventure. It teaches you how to jump over hoops. It teaches you to adjust, and it teaches you how to do things that you don't necessarily fully understand how to do. And that's one of the challenges I think that lots of people face when they go and pick up an idea, come up with an idea, and start to work on it.
Yes, I think that's right. There's a certain level of comfort maybe you learn this as a scientist that there's just things you profoundly don't know, but that it's okay. You just keep working on it, right? It doesn't have to, not every question has to be perfectly answered on day one. And I think innovators are more comfortable with that than, your regular corporate schlub.
That's very true. I think that scientific backgrounds teach you how to think. They teach you how to come up with hopefully unusual ideas, but that doesn't always translate into things that you can actually build in real life.
Mm-hmm.
And
Mm-hmm.
industry, go ahead.
Sorry, I wanted to go back to one thing you were saying because I think there is a theme there that scientific coding is different from commercial coding. Um, you know, I'm going to guess, but a lot of times scientific coding is kind of throwaway or you don't have to really share it. Is that the difference you're talking about? Why it's different?
It's one of it's probably the biggest difference. The difference is really in the purpose of that code. So when we do scientific coding, a lot of the times it's a one-time use for it only. So you only
Mm-hmm.
write code to make a calculation. So using this really just as a helping tool for yourself to come up with a data set, to transform a data set, come up with a single number sometimes. And so once you have that number, once you have transformed your data set, that's really all you need. And you throw away that code. So in a sense, you don't really care how well it works. It's not meant to be used by people other than yourself, maybe your close colleagues. And it's also not meant to be user-friendly in any sense. So
Mm-hmm.
user interfaces is one huge difference. The quality of the code. So
Right.
when we write industrial code, when I was doing this in several companies, it's you try to approach this code from the standpoint that somebody who has no idea about what this application is likely to break this. So you make it very safe, very reliable, or as reliable as you can get, and that's a huge difference. It
Mm-hmm.
may
Mm-hmm.
not be as creative, and it may not be as scientifically, mathematically involved, but it has to have
Mm-hmm.
the quality of the software. And that's what kind of factors into a product like DX Composers. It has to have both. It has to have the creative side of an original idea that has scientific background in our case, but also
Mm-hmm.
being accessible to, in our case, clinicians who will be the clients. So we'll have to build a product that's usable by people who don't care about all the scientific findings. They just need to solve their
All right.
day-to-day problems. And that's
This is like the conundrum, right? For most technical founders is that their domain, what they want to talk about the most, isn't often the first thing customers want to engage with. And so, but before we do that, let's talk about DX Composer actually, so that the audience has an understanding of like, what is DX Composer?
I jumped ahead of myself a little. DX Composer, thanks for the question. DX Composer is a startup that's building a platform for people to build AI diagnostic tools. So it's a medical startup,
Mm-hmm.
medical informatics startup. And our purpose is not to build a single diagnostic tool for a specific disease, but to build a platform that
Mm-hmm.
clinicians will use, researchers will use to build their own AI diagnostic tools.
Yeah, and we talked about this a little bit, so I really wanted to break this apart of who are the users and buyers for this, because it's a platform for others to build. So when you say clinicians, that who does that mean?
It's two or three types of clinicians, primarily the biggest audience. The way I envision this now, this product might actually pick up in different ways.
Of
But
course, we won't hold you to it. It's early. It's
yes,
still early days. We won't hold you
it's
to
still
it.
early.
But actually,
Uh,
just for listeners like who don't know, does clinician mean like doctors only, or what does
Pretty
it mean?
much, it's it's somebody who you see in a hospital. For instance, you have a bone fracture, you go to a hospital. So a nurse meets you first, so they take your vitals, and then you see the physician, the MD, who comes and looks at your data, asks you a few questions about where the pain is and so on and so forth. So that's a clinician.
Mm-hmm.
In my case, we're talking primarily about people who are radiologists. So once the X-ray
Mm-hmm.
is in, a radiologist will take the X-ray and they'll also look at the X-ray, whether it's an actual film. In some hospitals, it's still the case, or it's a digital image of your bones. They will look at these bones carefully and say, your bones are fine, no fracture. You can go home and relax and be fine. Or you have a fracture and you need to have a cast over your arm, things like that. So that's the primary type of clinician that we're going to face. The
I got
yeah,
you.
so the I gave a bone fracture just as an example that's that's familiar to lots of people. Like my daughter had a.
Sure. So
Mhm.
the
Yeah, go ahead, go.
oh, sorry, your daughter.
Yeah, my daughter had a bone fracture, so I'm basically describing a story of my real life.
But there's a lot of situations, right, for all of us as patients where you're seeing a specialist, a clinician to get a diagnosis. What's wrong with the way it works today? Why do those clinicians need AI?
Lots of things could be better. In a simple example of bone fracture, people have been diagnosing this for centuries by now, so there's a lot of information about this. But if you're talking about a cancer type that's fairly rare, and it's only a tiny fraction of the population that gets this cancer ever, you're talking about things that are extremely hard to diagnose. Because all that a physician, a clinician, a radiologist in our case has is a snapshot of that area in your body where the cancer might be. So they have to catch very subtle changes in the tissue looking at the snapshot. And it's not a perfect snapshot to begin with. It doesn't have sometimes the resolution, it doesn't have the angle at which you're looking at. And there are lots of other things that may look like cancer in it. It's just there's nothing in the image that tells you this is cancer. It just tells you that it looks like cancer. So it's a denser spot in a tissue, for instance. And so if you're looking at thousands of these snapshots in a day, which is what radiologists typically do, they get fatigue. They also get burnout because they're doing this day in, day out for years and years.
Right.
And so there's an element of too many snapshots, too many images that they have to look at. There's also an element that, go ahead.
No, you go ahead. There's also an element.
There's also an important element of why this isn't perfect now. There's an element of our gaps in knowledge. Like we don't know what a cancer looks like truly in all instances. A cancer at an early stage is a very minor change in the density of tissue. Will the actual radiologist see it when they see one of the thousands of snapshots that they look at daily? Chances are they may not. And so what I'm saying is the way AI is better than humans, in a sense better than humans, is it's able to reproduce the same thing without any fatigue. If you teach the AI to do one single thing well, it will carry on doing this infinitely.
Right. I find that very appealing about AI, actually, right? Because I think a lot of jobs are tedious. Let me kind of break this down. Walk with me. I'm going to say back to you what I think you're saying. So I'm a patient at Johns Hopkins, and I have a clinician who's reading my torso scan. And what I want, right, is for them to be correct and early. What that clinician wants is also to be correct and early, but they don't always have the tools, or they're getting tired. They don't have like an LLM that they can rely on. And then Johns Hopkins as an institution is sitting on top of a lot of information, and they also kind of want better outcomes, but they also have sort of a data perspective here, right? In terms of the things they're putting into and learning from the system. Do I have that kind of the players correct?
Absolutely. You've got the ingredients that go into a perfect diagnosing tool. And
okay.
Yeah. And I should also mention that, cancer is such a scary word. So people don't want to get into this sometimes because they're just scared to learn about this. But there's a kind of mistakes that happen when people get scanned that this AI will also have to avoid. And that's the false positives, so-called. So somebody comes who's perfectly healthy, has no problems, has this healthy lifestyle and all. And suddenly the clinician tells them, you have cancer. It's a shocking news for somebody. And this can also be a mistake. It can be done mistakenly. And so, and then the person who gets this, they live through a few weeks or a month or longer of uncertainty and worrisome times. And so if you teach AI to say that if there's no cancer, there's truly no cancer, and you're absolutely confident about this, and the AI tells the physician, you mistakenly took this little spot here for a cancer while it's actually not. That's what it is.
Because they're going to want to be like risk tolerant. They're going to want to like not take any risks, right? Because you want to rather than. And it's interesting. I believe that's the forefront of medicine right now. There's a philosophical kind of push between reactive and proactive medicine, where people are hesitant to do a full body scan because they get false positives. But it sort of seems like the smarter we're getting about medicine, the more opportunities we do have to be proactive rather than just reactive. And by the time you are really sick, you're really, it's harder to address. So
I really like that idea. I have a question for you, which is, why can't I just use ChatGPT for this if I'm a clinician?
For a number of reasons. First of all, ChatGPT is a generative type of AI, so it's smart, quote unquote, in answering questions and absorbing information. But it's not made to per se solve classification tasks, what we call, and cancer diagnostics is a classification task. The classification task is basically when you take an object and say, what kind of object is this? Is this a cancerous growth?
Mm-hmm.
Is this malignant? Does it look like it's benign? Does it look like just a tissue variation that's perfectly healthy and you guys go home, feel perfectly fine, you're healthy and you can carry on doing whatever you're doing, no worries here. So that's the classification that you want to produce. So an LLM isn't really made to solve this kind of tasks. It can do that in a sense, but it's not trained to do this. It's also not trained to do specific tasks that have the responsibility with it, because if you talk about medical implications, it has to be extremely accurate, extremely reliable. It cannot hallucinate the way LLMs do. It also has to be able to absorb the type of information that LLMs don't usually deal with well. It's images, so it's pixels. It's
Okay,
yeah.
interesting.
So it's a different it's a
No,
different tool basically. That's what it is.
that's right. So I think it's really interesting to fall into that trap of, oh, it's an LLM, but there's dozens of other types of AI. In this case, you're using image processing and you're using, I assume, classification that's been proven out somewhere, or you know that this is the right class. How do you know it's the right classification? I guess I should ask that question.
The ultimate answer is you don't actually know 100%, but you produce accuracies that are very high, and you know exactly what the accuracies
Okay.
are. So if we get to a point where 99% of cases were accurate, that's very good. Actually, it's better than most clinicians can get. But the thing is, it's measurable, and you know what the accuracy is. So if the AI tells you that that's not cancer, you're 99.9% sure that you can go home and take your next beer or Coke or coffee, whatever you drink, right? And
Yeah, yeah,
um,
yeah.
and that's
Yeah,
the
yeah.
and that's the reliability of it. When you're dealing with a human who've been stressed out, who has problems at home, their accuracy falls, and it's somewhat unpredictable. And
Right,
they have a backlog of 2
right.
weeks, for instance, and their head of the department comes to them and say, "Hey, the people have been waiting for the scan report for 2 weeks. Can you please get them out today?" So they feel even more stressed out. So we want to take this out of the equation. We want to have something that's completely reliable, because if it's a software piece, it works exactly at midnight on day 1, and on day 100 at 5 a.m. it will work the exact same way. So we take out the
Yeah,
uncertainty.
yeah.
You also mentioned, I want to harken back to what you said about data. There's another aspect of it. Johns Hopkins, not a bad school, excellent, well-trained physicians with a lot of experience and a large population around them who comes to them, diverse populations that come and expose their variation to them. So these are one of the better ones in the country in this area. If you go to a rural hospital with relatively small population around it, just a few MDs at this hospital, they don't see the same population. They might be less experienced because they decided to go to a remote place and help people out in a settings
Of
that
course.
doesn't have Kennedy Center, 10,000 restaurants, whatever.
Which is actually a huge, huge need. Like that's a real sacrifice. A lot of very well-trained doctors go into these rural settings to really help people, but then they don't see the breadth and depth
Yeah,
of
and it's
cases.
about data. It's about what they see. Any clinician and a radiologist, especially, is very good at what they see a lot of. So if they see a lot of this particular type of scans, they get very good at doing this. But if there's a marginal case that comes around, they may miss it. If you're able to tap into different data sources and combine them all and train the AI model using this diverse data sources, then you have a universal diagnostic tool, more universal than somebody who just sees a particular kind of patient variation population, because
I think that's so
and so
interesting.
in a sense you broaden up the skill set almost infinitely if you can tap in those different data sets, which is extremely challenging because Johns Hopkins has a large data set, a smaller hospital has a smaller data set, but neither of them are willing to share, most likely. I'm guessing this, but that's probably true a lot of different.
Even if they are, I mean, you know what, they don't share, but even if they did, it's so technical. There use a lot of technical barriers often in the medical world. Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you.
You're just you're hitting you're hitting the nail on the head. It's about legal stuff, and there's good reasons for that, because the reasons that they don't want to share because there are laws for this, and there's also the concern about patient privacy. If the data leaks, then a lot of personal data is exposed. We don't want this, and that's another aspect of what we're trying to solve.
Yeah, let me talk about that because let's walk through how it works, and you can kind of hit on some of that. I wanted to sort of set the stage here, right? Which is that diagnostics are hard, people are flawed, right? And there's like inequities of information and classification coming in, right? So let me just walk this through. I'm a clinician, so or let me say, I'm a big hospital like Johns Hopkins. I engage with DX Composer, and do you just set up a DX Composer for my institution? And what one institution, one specialty?
No, it's quite the opposite of this. I hate to say this, but it's completely the opposite of this. Because
no, it's good.
And there's a reason for that. Because if I make one diagnostic tool for one type of cancer, I only help a small fraction of the population. It's costly because I have to develop this whole thing for just one diagnostic area, and I only help this relatively small, sometimes tiny fraction of the population. So I go to a hospital, go through all the negotiations, sell it to the hospital, and the hospital starts using this. What's the effect of this? We're now able to diagnose one particular cancer type better than previously. That's the effect.
Okay. So it's like siloed when you do it that way.
Very
it's
narrow,
siloed.
very narrow in its breadth. I'm not saying that.
That's how a lot of tools work, though. I mean, today that's what. And so your thing is, I'm like the head of Johns Hopkins, and I buy your thing, and then I can distribute it to everybody to customize. Is that the plan?
Is, what I offer you is not one single tool. I'm saying that there'll be some pre-made models, and you will be able to diagnose some cancer types. But it's much more than that. I'm saying that now you don't have to go and buy a diagnostic tool from an IT medtech information company. You can make your own tool on your premises. It sounds like a strange idea because why would a radiologist engage in this? But in fact, there are hospitals that have departments nowadays that build their own AI. So instead of having multiple hospitals do this in parallel and use the same resources, I want to offer them a platform like this and say, you build your own tools. You build them the way you want them for diseases that you feel are speaking to your population now. Things that you want to build up as your diagnostic capacity at this point. It's also true that once you build it, you have to tweak it every once in a while, because the population and the data sets that you use, the scans that you use, they drift over time. So the model that's currently on the market is one disease, one tool, one model doesn't actually work, because over time they will become worse and worse. They will the diagnostic quality.
They drift away from their accuracy. Yeah. We see that a lot in the data world too, in the finance world, things starts drifting, and you've got to measure that.
Right. I mean, it happens with any kind of data, because data changes. It's a moving object. It's a moving target that you're trying to hit every time. So it's perfect on day one, but in 2 years it will be mediocre.
It's very slippery stuff, data. It doesn't want to stay in one place,
It's amorphous, and it changes over time. And so if I tell you that you can make your own tool for diagnosing this, pretty complex problem. But also, if you need to change this over time, if you want to tweak this in, say, 2 or 3 months or half a year, all you have to do is just dial up some menus in your graphical interface or speak with your voice to that application and say, hey, DX Composer, I'm sick and tired of you making these mistakes in this diagnostics. Can you please improve this? Here's some data for you. That's the folder that you should go to, and that's where you can pick up your data. Can you please make
This is all the updated information we have on this type of skin
please make
cancer or
yourself
whatever.
better in 4 hours for me, and tell me how much better you are in 4 hours than you are now. And everything else is done under the hood. And so in 4 hours they come back, and the application tells them, now I can diagnose this particular disease 5% better. So it was 85% accuracy, now it's 90% accuracy. If you give me more data, I'll be even more accurate for you. Why isn't this an appealing application? I don't know. I think it is an appealing application.
Well, of course, yes, it is appealing. I think when I'm trying to think about just these big organizations just implementing it, right? So they would give this out to their different departments, who could each implement, according to their needs. They could hook it up to people's electronic health files individually, add individual information, but then also add this kind of backgrounding information, like here's our Cleveland Clinic standard for diagnosing. We've got new information. You could put that in and keep working on it. I think that the thing that I think it would be, well, first of all, I have 100 questions. But first of all, let's kind of back up, because something I always like to ask that I forgot to ask here. I mean, this seems like an amazing tool. It gives a lot of freedom to the experts, the clinicians, right, in the field, which I think is always so important. How big of a problem, though, in general, is misdiagnosis? Like a lot of AI and medicine people I talk to, they're like novel cures and new, types of molecules that they're building. But like, this seems like is this a big problem, misdiagnosis? I mean, I sort of feel like it is, but do you have any kind of background on that?
It's true that we need more drugs, more procedures to cure people, but it's also true that we have a huge problem in this medical system, which is misdiagnosis. Just to give you a couple of reference points for this, how big of a problem this is, if you can think of it, but it's almost 1 million people yearly in this country who die or experience serious harm to their health because of misdiagnosis. And those are cases that are established as such. To be accurate, it's 795,000 yearly. It's an estimate, and there are other estimates out there, but this is kind of average. There are higher and lower estimates for this. But imagine 1 million people losing their lives or becoming permanently disabled, having serious impact to their health yearly. That's the size of the problem. It might.
That's something I love that you're focusing on, because sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you, but it's it's such a big problem that we almost have normalized. We're like, oh yeah, mistakes happen, but not, I love that you're kind of coming back to it with this new technology to say, like, maybe we can address this problem that's right in front of us, not some problem from 2030, 2040, but it's right in front of us today.
To give the financial view of this, it's $100 billion yearly. That's what it costs us. Yeah, so couldn't we use this money for something else and make better drugs, help more people who lack medical care at this point? We probably could. Talking about using government money efficiently, for instance. If you look at this problem that's so huge, when I was talking about 5% improvement in diagnostic accuracy, it translates into tens and hundreds of thousands of people who will not experience that harm or die yearly if we could improve this just by a few percent. So any improvement in this area is welcome. It's a huge area where there is a need for innovation and there's a need for new technologies. So if we could drive it up just a little in accuracy, reliability, reproducibility, accessibility of this diagnostic tools to areas that are remote from large cities, we improve a lot of lives. That's for sure.
Yeah. I mean, it's exciting, and it's always so uplifting to talk to science and technology founders because these are the big ideas, right? Which is, part of the reason I start the show there is because that's why we all engage with this and why you're doing this. Just to turn the corner a little bit, though, right? Because investors and buyers also want to know probably a little bit more about how are you thinking about the business side of DX Composer? Like, how do you get paid? What's the business model? Is anybody using this today? Those type of like more mundane questions. So I guess what is the business model in your
Well,
mind, or
the
would you
core
like
of
it
the
to be?
business model is licensing the platform to hospitals. And the licensing fee at this point is estimated to be fairly low on the scale of expenses that they run. So it's not overwhelmingly costly to a hospital to license to subscribe to our services. It's also true that there's more than just paying because they will actually earn down the line. Um, um, um,
Oh, okay.
so once they start using this platform, it comes with a couple of diagnostic models that they can use out of the box. But over time, they will improve those models and likely create their own models for diagnosing different diseases. Once they have those models, they become a commodity for them. So they can sell that type of knowledge and skill to other hospitals. So
I
for a
got you.
hospital, it's a dual thing. It's a win-win. They get a fairly low subscription fee that they pay for the platform, and at the same time, they by doing so, they get into a marketplace where they can actually sell their radiologist skills to other hospitals. So Johns Hopkins, for instance, if it buys this thing and develops models that are accurate, that compete well with other people in the country, for instance, and if they publicize them, they say we have this accuracy for this type of cancer diagnostics. A remote hospital somewhere in the U.S. will look at this and say, "We won this," and yeah,
Why should I build it myself? Right?
I
It already got
probably won't
built.
be able to
Yeah.
build it myself as well as they did. So licensing this for a moderate fee is very attractive to many people. So instead of going to a company that does full cycle development for this and probably charges outrageous money for this, they'll go to that hospital and say, "Can you share this model with me for some money?" And this way you
Right. Right.
basically create a completely different landscape. It's not siloed practices of MDs, but it's a marketplace where if you have the skill, the capacity, if you want to go that extra mile of making your own AI tool, you become competitive. You also become known as the hub for this type of diagnostics. So it's not like you're
Right.
outsourcing your clinicians to someone else. It's you becoming the center of this diagnostics if you're trying to use that.
Well, and it's also great. I mean, it's subversive in the way that open source software is a bit subversive. I don't think I did a medical data startup a few years back, and what you're describing, because I'm on the tech side, right? Silicon Valley world, and which weirdly is separate from the medical world. Like there's not as much crossover, and who knows how it works. And I was shocked to find out what you're describing. There are like little niche software programs being sold to one hospital for one, department, and then it gets implemented and it gets like completely like frozen in there. They can't undo it. They don't know where their data is. And there are, I would say, hundreds of thousands of companies who have sold a one and done solution to medical organizations, and then they can't it's very hard to unwind. And so, I mean, I don't know if you would agree with that, but I was shocked to see how many small players are going to have to just get ripped out at some point.
It
It's
is
a
a
waste of
waste
money.
of money and resources, human resources. I agree, and I can testify to what you're saying because I was part of a startup like this myself, and yeah,
There's a million of them.
And so what happens is because you're so eager to sell and cater to that one place, you get locked in because you cater to one client and you please them. But if you want to scale, you face a lot of problems because your code and your application overall doesn't apply to a different type of client. So you have to rebuild this application. And so there's a
Right.
certain glass ceiling for this type of companies. Once you silo yourself into a bunch of clients, one client, it's really hard to scale. This thing is meant to be scalable infinitely. It's meant to be universal because it's UI, and people interact with it through a UI,
Right.
through agentic UI by speaking to the application like we speak now, and also by using graphical interfaces. So it's supposed to be, it's supposed to have a really shallow learning curve so that a clinician will have the time to learn how to use it. And it's supposed to be applicable to a wide range of clinicians. What I want to do is I want to unleash the creativity in radiologists. They all complain, anyone that I've talked to, they all complain about how much they have to work and how stressful that is. And my answer to this is help yourself. There might be a tool for this, and you can speed up your work by a factor of 2 or 3. And then you actually have for this coffee break times.
Well, no, it's a big problem. But burnout for doctors, there's a huge, there's been a lot of coverage of it recently in the news. So that's definitely great. And I do love this idea of opening up the platform so that it's a reusable tool. But let's kind of flip to the other side, though, because you've been in large school enterprises. You've seen implementations, like operationally, though. And I don't want to just make this like a reductive conversation about data security, but people are going to worry about data security, about privacy in your own mind. And I know it's early days. Like, how do you see like successful implementations going at organizations that do have serious privacy and security concerns? Like, what's going to work in your mind?
Two
implement.
things should work, and I'm not 100% confident that one of them will work, but there's a chance it will. It's making consortia. That's the way Europeans have done it. They've organized themselves in consortia. So people, different data aggregators, for instance, they get together, they negotiate data use agreements, and they share their data sets. By doing so, they become so much more powerful as a data source for AI and other medical uses. So hopefully we'll have the legislature, the will and the power to make such consortia happen, but it probably will take a long time, and I'm not 100% sure it will succeed. Another way, which is what I'm suggesting, is instead of trying to make institutions open up their data sources to each other, I want to go to that institution and do my calculations on premises. So there's a technology piece, and we have a patent for one particular use case for that implementation that allows you to carry out all the calculations, all the model training without ever crossing institutional barriers, and yet you're able to combine the power of massive data sets into one single model. So essentially, instead of data going to the computation goes to the data set. And so it trains on smaller data sets, and then it combines the results of this training in a larger model. Exactly. And so
The outcomes.
that keeps people, the lawyers at hospitals and the data management at the hospitals relatively safe about their data sets because nothing ever leaves their institution. It's always in premises, so it's in their network. And it doesn't cross the institutional barriers ever.
So it's really the outcomes, right, of the model and not the actual input data. So you're able to kind of have a nice like division, right, between the outcome, the model that you can share, and then all the data that you keep in-house that you don't want to share. So I think that's really important item that you have a patented approach, that you kind of built this in operationally from the beginning. AI is exciting. The AI component is exciting, but these kind of operational items are kind of like one-way architectural decisions that if you don't make them early, it can really be tough to
I
get
think so. I think
adopted
that
at
data
scale.
access and the amount of data that you have at your disposal for training is what matters. That's what makes a model diagnose well. That's what makes a great model. If you don't have access to large data sets, you might as well not do it because you won't be able to train models well. And so if you're not able to solve that problem, you either have to buy large data sets, you have to be inside an institution that has a lot of data sets. And by the way, we actually have um, agreements, preliminary agreements with very large data aggregators by now. So we will have access. But I don't want to stop at this. I want to make this
That's great.
such that any institution can participate and feel safe about sharing their data sets. Not sharing data sets. I'm not saying it wrong.
Mm-hmm.
I'm saying that we will do the calculations with your data in-house at your institution, so your data will actually never get exposed outside of the institution. And it's at some level, like you were saying, at some level, what they worry about is the PII exposure, so something that can identify a patient uniquely. But at some point, when you train your models, that information becomes obscured, and the model waits at some point, what we call, so the abstracted information is abstracted to an extent where you cannot trace back to any single person or a group of people, patients, and that's what you share. But that's enough knowledge that you gain from the data set for the large model, for the combined model to be so much more powerful, times the number of sources that you use. That's how it works.
Amazing. Yeah, that's I'm glad to hear you have access to data to get started. I love this idea of starting with modules already so that people can see the path. That's another one when you're dealing with platform plays. Sometimes it's just too open field. People need a starting place. So I think that's actually one of the cool moats that you've built around this technology, along with your patent and your focus on sort of the operations and privacy side, as well as the actual diagnostics. What let me ask you this, just to kind of switch gears too. Where like I think right now you're engaging with investors and first customers. Is that right? You're early testers and yeah. Um, Tell me about your team because I think it's really you have a great team and I would be curious to know who they are a little bit, but also how you selected them. Why that team?
It's been a twofold process. One is it's colleagues of mine that I've known for quite a while who've been on a similar journey with mine. Been part of the academia. There's an engineer who was working in academia for a long time, and he has a lot of experience that comes from the NIH. We were building huge databases together. So if you use PubMed, for instance, that's one of the huge databases that we built together and worked on. And there are also a bunch of younger people who bring in more user-oriented technologies, so they're able to design really slick, shiny, user-friendly interfaces, which is part of this equation, I feel. There's a guy who is a kind of an unusual person because he won several AI data mining competitions. He has like a gold medal at Kaggle. And he's self-taught.
Oh yeah, Kaggle.
He's self-taught, believe it or not. So he's an engineer. Yeah. And so, but
that.
that's really rare talent. And so he's on board with us, and he will be organizing the team that builds the AI, the brains of the application together. And he himself carries a lot of experience and a lot of knowledge that's cutting edge. So just to give you an example, it's a single person who outcompeted teams like Amazon, Google, and Microsoft. Like he beat them. His models beat the models. I hate to say this, but that's the case. So he.
No, yeah. That's what I love about this business is that it's a meritocracy in some cases, right? You can see like talent really shows up and they have a place to get
so the way I
acknowledged. That's really
approach people selection is I describe, much like I do here with you and the audience, I describe what the idea is and I see whether it excites them or not. and I also look at the backgrounds, obviously. But if it's a huge background, but if it's somebody who just wants to sit tight and have a steady, stable career, that's not what it is. It's an adventure, like I said, like any startup, and there'll be ups and downs along this journey. But if they're excited, if they see the big goal down the line, and if they see the huge impact that this company may have on the future of the healthcare and the population quality of life, that's the kind of person that I'd like to have on the team. And so there's several of those already. We're open to new people who want to join. We definitely need people in marketing who are similar types to what I described. At this point, I've had complaints about people not getting sufficiently compensated for what they do because we have very limited resources at this point. But I've never heard anyone say anything about the atmosphere. It's fantastic atmosphere. I hate, I hate to be self-promoting so much, but people have said, but people come back. People come
That's what we're
back
here
to,
for.
come back to the Slack channel that we use at strange hours of day and night, and they pitch in ideas that are sometimes overwhelming. I was shocked by what people were able to contribute. Younger people, fresh graduates. So, yeah.
I think that's great. We do not include younger. We need to make sure we're including younger people. I think this is my 2 cents. Sometimes we over-index on industry experience when, kind of if everybody has to have 20 years of experience, then you don't get the fresh ideas all the time. So I'm really happy that you have younger voices
there has to be
on your
the
team.
drive.
That's
I think
good.
that's what matters. I was in one of my previous engagements. I was doing a lot of hiring for a medium-sized med tech company. I was replacing an outshore operation with U.S. employees here, and one thing that I learned by interviewing several dozen, if not hundreds, of people, is people who are able to grow are more valuable than the ones who have a lot of experience but are somewhat stale in their careers. So there has to be a drive. There has to be a lively interest in what they're doing. I think that's what attracts people to this field. It's if I describe the area that we're in, a lot of people get excited because they understand that it's the cutting edge. That's what's going to happen next, and there'll be development in this area for years to come.
That's so great. I love that. I do think it's kind of the themes of the shows that big ideas really matter. And they keep people focused on innovating as much as money or fame or any other component. And as a particular thing, I think with technical founders to get excited about being on that cutting edge of invention. And that's kind of where I wanted to wrap this up. Well, a couple of questions as a wrap up. I'm going to ask you a little bit about where you'd like to see your company in the next, like a year from now, if we do another podcast. What would you like to have true? And then any advice you have for other technical founders who may be
These are
hanging out in their
excellent questions.
lab,
So my
wondering if they should do
vision
it.
of the next year, year and a half is the team grows and we come up with a working MVP, and we sign up with our first hospital client. I want sales to, at least partnerships, start early, because I want to develop this in a partnership with a real hospital, and I have some candidates for this at this point. So I want to finalize that partnership and have them embark on a partnership with us, and in a year and a half, probably realistically from now, start diagnosing in a testing phase on their data sets. I also want to see an FDA application filed within this year and a half, probably for 510K. So, it's a quick application turnaround cycle. I've seen them being approved in about 3 months for AI applications previously for other companies. So I'm expecting this to be a quick turnaround for us as well. That's what I would like to see as my ultimate achievements in the
Okay.
next year to year and a half. For
We'll check in and do another podcast and see where you've landed. I think those are modest goals, and
keeping
you
my
should
fingers
definitely be
crossed for
able to
this,
accomplish those
and I'm also
based on
doing a
everything
lot
I've
of
seen so
work to
far.
make this happen.
Yeah.
For advice to other people, locally I interact with a lot of people who are in similar positions with mine, founders of MedTech and other AI techie startups in this area, and we all face the same problem. We face lack of structure, so it's really hard to structure your work. So my advice is to have a game plan early on and time yourself as to what you want to achieve within what time frames. Be very flexible and ready for pivoting and changing your course, changing your approach. Never give up, because if you have a great idea, it's worth doing it. And also, yeah,
Yes.
one thing that I personally found very, very useful and reassuring is talk to people who will be using your application, what you're building. So in our case, it's the patients and it's the clinicians. If you talk to them and you find that your product, the way you envision this, appeals to them, they like it, talk to them more. You'll get the inspiration. You'll get ideas from them also. So close that loop and have a full circle. Talk to your clients early and see if they like your idea and get feedback from them, get the reassurance from them. Also, I always say that, interestingly enough, for a
Yeah.
lot of us, we get our best ideas by combining fields that are not narrowly focused on what we're doing. So read a lot, talk to a lot of people, listen to a lot of podcasts from different people, talk to people outside of your narrow area, describe what you're doing to them, listen to what they're doing, get the inspiration and new ideas by combining the thought process from different areas. That will get you very, very much further from where you are.
I love that. I think that's so true. I mean, I've always been an advocate of the generalist approach, right? Where you synthesize a lot of different information. I think is actually so much more important now in the age of AI, because all the models are getting blown up, and the way we think you should do things might be completely turned on its head. And so it's good to, I think, get that plasticity that comes from reading broadly, engaging with a bunch of different people. I actually have a quick side question, and then we'll sign off. But how did you find these people to talk to? That is a question that I often get from, my students and other people I work with. Like, what I think so interesting about what you're saying is, I think because you have a great idea or an interesting idea, they're interested in talking to you, right? Has it been difficult or easy? Or tell me a little bit about how you
I
found some
think that
people to
going
talk
to
to about your
conferences,
idea.
especially local conferences, helps a lot. So even if it's a small conference, even if it's just
Okay.
a presentation at Georgetown, for instance, or other schools in the area.
It could be
Yeah.
even better,
And
actually.
don't
It
be
could be
shy.
easier
Don't
to meet
assume that
people. Yeah.
people are not interested in what you're saying. Talk to people that you meet at conferences. A lot of this is online. So if you see somebody on LinkedIn who is along your valley, just approach them and see if they can respond to you, if they get interested in what you're saying. I'm also fortunate to be part of what's called BHI. It's a Maryland-based incubator, in a sense, for startups, for medical startups. So look them up, BHI in Maryland. If you're a Maryland company, you may qualify to be part of them. If you meet those folks, you will be able to make many, many more connections through them, because they're really well connected.
That's great news. Great tip as well. Those can be so super helpful organizations. Well, Dmitri, it's been great talking to you about the really big ideas, and I'm pre-committing you to come back and give us an
Absolutely.
update.